Okay, in this video we are going to go over the inequalities, multi-step inequalities, and number line, and literal equations review from Desmos. So on screen 3, you're going to have to answer these 4 questions, and the answers are on the right somewhere. And then let's say our first answer is A, so we'll type A and then the next letter, next letter, next letter, and then hit submit. If you're right, then the next screen will be unlocked. You'll get the next 4 problems. If you are incorrect, then you have to keep going until you are right. So for the first problem, we have 3x plus 2 is greater than negative 4x plus 16. So there are no parentheses, so no distribution. So I am going to move the variable. So we're going to undo minus 4x by adding 4x. Combine like terms now that they're on the same side. We're not allowed to combine if they're on different sides. And we have a 2-step. We're going to minus 2. We're left with 7x is greater than 14. Divide by 7. Notice that this is a positive 7 divided by on both sides, so we're not going to switch the inequality. So our first answer is going to be A. So I'm just going to mark an A right there so I'm aware of it. The second problem is negative 16 plus 7x, so there's nothing to combine and there's no distribution on that side, is less than or equal to. And then I can distribute right away, so this leaves me 12x and then plus 9. Now this becomes a problem like number 1, where I want to move the x's to the left. Be mindful of where you put that minus 12x. It needs to line up under the 7x, even though it's on the inside part. So then we have negative 16 minus 5x is less than or equal to 9. So now this becomes a 2-step. So that should be a plus 16. One big error that I've noticed, students forget to jot down that negative sign. So be mindful of that. Now this problem is slightly different than our first problem because we are dividing by a negative on both sides. So our less than or equal to becomes greater than or equal to. And then 25 divided by negative 5 is negative 5. Which is our letter R. So once again, I'm going to just put a note there. Number 3, we have to be careful of this negative sign. That negative really means negative 1 is outside the parentheses. So we can distribute that negative 1. We're not going to use the x until the second line, so please drop it down. So negative times a negative is a positive. Negative 1 times a negative 2 is a positive 2. We have like terms here. If you need to put that 1 in front, you can. 1x plus 4x gets us 5x. And now we have that 2-step. We undo adding 2 by minusing 2 on both sides. Now we're dividing by a positive on both sides, so nothing happens to the inequality symbol. So it just stays x is less than 1, which is W. And then number 4 is very similar to number 3. You just want to make sure that you do not combine first. We have to distribute because we're doing the order of operations. So 8 gets written down, plus 4x minus 16 is less than or equal to 20. Now our like terms, you want to make sure that you box up this symbol of the minus sign because that will tell you the operation to do. So when we're combining, we have to do 8 minus 16, which is negative 8, plus 4x is less than or equal to 20. And now it's a two-step. To undo subtraction, we add. We're going to divide by 4 on both sides. And then we're left with x is less than or equal to 7, which is letter D. So you want to make sure that you put those 4 letters in order. So A, R, W, D. Make sure that it's not capitalized. If it is, it won't work. All right, so we know we got it right. The genie appeared, and so did our problems for the second one. So these are literal equations. So we have ax plus by equals c. Now we're solving for y. So we have to undo adding or subtracting first. Since this is adding ax, we're allowed to move it all together. So minus ax. We're left with by equals c minus ax. Now remember, we're still trying to get y by itself, so you want to look on the same side. We're multiplying b, so to undo multiplying, we divide. Now since there are none of the same letter, we are allowed to just keep it as is. So in this case, it is going to be the letter U. Number 2, you're allowed to do several different ways. The one that I showed you on bell work yesterday, we minus 5 on both sides because we're undoing adding. But notice that we are still left with a negative 1 really, and that's being multiplied to x. To undo multiplying, we have to divide. So this answer is the answer that is on this board. But you can simplify it in a couple different ways, which I did on screen 4. So a positive y divided by a negative 1 would really be a negative y, and then a negative divided by a negative is really positive 5. So that's another way you could write it, even though that answer is not there right now. Number 3 is actually just a one-step. This is also like the bell work from yesterday. We're solving for t, and you want to look on the same side as t. And in this case, it's I times r times t. So to undo multiplying, since we're multiplying together, we're allowed to divide together. I over I is 1, r over r is 1, so we are left with 1t. And we are left with p divided by ir, which is letter C. Now number 4 is tricky, so we want to be careful with number 4 because there's a few layers here. So I understand we want to get to this x, but this x is caught. It's in the numerator. We can't deal with that yet. So we have to undo adding or subtracting. In this case, we're adding 25, so we're up to minus 25. And we are left with that fraction. Now we still can't get to the numerator. We need to undo it by undoing the denominator. So instead of dividing by 2, we're doing the inverse. We're going to multiply by 2. Now this is tricky because there's 2 terms here. So we have to multiply both terms by 2. So then that leaves us to A minus 50. And then if you need to draw Captain America's shield to protect the numerator, that's fine. We're finally let go of the parentheses. We let go of the denominator. So all we have is the numerator, which is a one step. And then we have 2A minus 45 equals X. So let's find that one. Sorry, so that is letter J. That goes with J. So what are the letter order U, P, once again needs to be not capitalized, U, P, C, and then J. All right, we got the butterfly, and now our third screen is unlocked. So we're going to distribute number 1. So we're left with 6x plus 4 is greater than 6x plus 1. We're going to minus 6x on both sides. Notice that the x's wipe out. And we have to determine if this is a true or a false statement. So read it out loud to yourself or in your mind. This says 4 is greater than 1. 4 is bigger than 1. So this is actually a true statement. And whenever you get a true statement in math, that actually means infinitely many solutions. So H is going to be our letter for that one. I'm going to just distribute negative 2 inside the parenthesis to save on some time. So then I'm going to add 10 on both sides here. We're left with negative 2x is less than or equal to 14. Now remember, because we haven't seen this in a couple slides, when you divide both sides by a negative, we have to make the less than or equal sign greater than or equal to. So we have to switch it. So that is going to be the letter V. And for number 3, I'm just going to distribute right away. 2 times 7 is 14. And then plus 8x is greater than or equal to 8x plus 34. So move the x's onto the left side. However, they wipe out. And then just like number 1, we have to read it out loud to ourselves. This says 14 is greater than or equal to 34. You have to say, is 14 bigger than 34? No, it's not. It's actually smaller. So that's a false statement, which leads you to the answer of no solution. So that's going to be our letter B. And then lastly, we have to be very mindful here. This is really a negative 1, and we're distributing. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. And negative 1 times negative 4x is a positive 4x is greater than 2x minus 3. So we're allowed to combine. We have 2x's plus 4x gets us 6x. Going to minus 2x on both sides. Left with 4x minus 3 is greater than negative 3. Add 3 on both sides, which is allowed. You actually saw this on a worksheet before. We're left with 0, and that's okay because 0 is going to be in our numerator. And whenever 0 is in the numerator and we're dividing, it just stays 0. So then it is going to be x is greater than 0, which is our letter D. So we're going to put those codes in together. So no capital, H, V, letter B, and then D. And then finally, our last screen is unlocked. Number 1, we have volume equals pi r squared times h. Remember, pi and r squared are just being multiplied. So we are allowed to undo those together by dividing. So we end up with our h by itself with v in the numerator all over pi r squared. So that is our letter N. Number 2 is one of those tricky ones again. You're going to see that on the test. So please beware and practice this one. So to undo minus 50, we're going to add 50 on both sides. We're left with P plus 50 because we want to get to the fraction. We want to get to the numerator. We want to get to W. So we do have to multiply by 7. And you have to remember you have to multiply the whole left side by 7. So I introduced the parentheses. So we have 7p plus 350. And notice the 7 on the right just cancels out dividing by 7 because it's 7 times 1/7. So that becomes a 1. And we're left with the numerator. So we're going to minus 10 on both sides because that's the opposite of addition. So then that answer is letter D. Number 3 is slightly easier because we don't have to undo adding or subtracting first. We go straight to the numerator, which is dividing by W. To undo dividing by W, we multiply by W. So we have WY equals X plus U. So then I'm allowed to minus U on both sides because we're solving for X. And we have X isolated, which is our letter G. And then for number 4, I decided that I'm going to simplify it a different way than I did on slide 1, just to show you both. We want just y by itself. So I'm actually going to add y to make it positive. Okay? But notice that really doesn't do anything other than making it positive. We still have to get rid of this positive x. So this x is really being added. So then we want to minus x on both sides. So then y equals, I like to put the x first, negative x plus 15. You could do 15 minus x equals y. There's a few different ways to write it. You just want to be careful and make sure that the negative sign stays with the x. So that would be our letter J. So then our letters are N, D, G, and J. So let's make sure that works. Remember, no capitals, N, D, G, and J. And then it does work. So then all you have to do is upload your work on the next page. Hopefully this review helped, and if not, please make sure that you email me before 8 p.m. Thanks, guys.